I have been playing the J-7E to an extent that many would probably consider unhealthy. And just because I've played it so much, I figured I should probably make another video on it before the Apex Predators update. The J-7E has been one of the best top tier jets for quite some time now, but that time is coming to an end. The Apex Predators update is right around the corner, which means we're getting the MiG-29 and the F-16. I definitely have some opinions about this new Apex Predators update that we're getting soon, but today I'm really just here to tell you, play the J-7E while it's still fun. Because once the MiG-29 and the F-16s are in game, you're just going to be simply outclassed. And basically, if you're flying anything but the F-16 and the MiG-29, you're just going to not have the best time. But for now, until Apex Predators, the J-7E is still a very fun plane. Anyway, what the hell even is this, like, Chinese knockoff MiG-21? Well, it's much less of a knockoff and much more of an upgrade to a regular MiG-21. As I'm sure most of you know, the MiG-21 was a very successful fighter at the time, and production ran for a very long time. Production ran from 1959 all the way to 1985. Over 11,000 were built, and that's not including any of the Chinese J-7 variants, because there are quite a few of those as well. Now, I don't know the exact production run of the J-7E. I was seeing some different numbers between different websites, but from what I gathered, it ran from the early 1990s until the early 2000s and is still in service with many countries to this day. And also, when I was looking through the Wikipedia page of the J-7, it had a list of the accident history of the J-7s, and there are some as recent as June of this year, which I kind of found interesting. Anyway, the J-7E and War Thunder. What makes this thing so unique, and why do I think it's still one of the best top tier jets in the game? Well, in my opinion, there are two reasons. The first being the shape of the wing, and the second being the 4 PL-5B missiles that this plane gets. Now, if we compare the wing shape of the J-7E with a regular MiG-21, we're going to see a little bit of a difference here. Now, as you can see, the wing of the MiG-21 is more of a traditional delta wing, which is basically just a triangle. Now, if we look at the wing of the J-7E, it doesn't exactly look the same. As you can see, at the edges of the wings, it begins to sort of flare outwards a bit. This is called a double delta wing, and this specifically is exactly why this thing has such amazing flight performance compared to a regular MiG-21. Now, I don't know the first thing about fluid dynamics, but for whatever reason, a double delta wing provides for some pretty wild performance, at least in War Thunder. If we compare the flight performance of a J-7E to a MiG-21 BIS, for example, we are going to see some pretty important differences. The MiG-21 is going to do some things that are pretty typical for a delta wing aircraft. It's going to pull a lot of angle of attack, and it'll lose a whole lot of speed while turning. Now, in certain situations, yeah, this is great to have, but for the most part, I would rather have something that pulls less AOA and holds energy better. And this is where the J-7E comes in, with its double delta wing and the performance that comes along with it. This double delta wing on the J-7E allows it to pull a lot of Gs, just as much as any MiG-21. But instead of losing all your speed as soon as you even think about turning, you maintain a massive amount of energy through turns. And this is purely anecdotal, but if you do end up getting slow in a dogfight or something, this thing seems like it has a lot more control at low speeds as well. However, it's so rare that top tier matches actually end with a dogfight. Usually it's decided by who has more missiles, who fires them better, who's positioned better, and which team has more situational awareness. Oh yeah, and one more thing about the flight performance of the J-7E. If you get really low on fuel and you fired your missiles off, this thing becomes an absolute UFO. Once this thing does start running low on fuel, everything it does well already, it just gets amplified tenfold. I wish I had some recent good footage of a dogfight with this plane. I know I have something somewhere, but it would take so long to go dig and look for it that I'm just not even going to bother with it. In fact, I already have tried to look for it. I spent probably 45 minutes digging through old footage. By the way, I don't delete like any of my footage. I really need to. Shit, if my footage was actually organized, I would probably save so much time. Anyway, that's the flight performance of the J-7E. The other thing that makes this thing so great are the 4 PL-5B missiles. Now, the PL-5Bs are some of the best missiles in the game, and there are a few reasons for that alone. First off, this thing's got some very, very good range. Obviously, having a lot of range in an IR missile is very nice to have, and if you're at a higher altitude, you can get some like really long shots off with these missiles. Now, even though the PL-5s have some very, very good range, they don't really have a very long burn time, which that alone is a very good advantage. Now, for those of you who don't know, the little red marker that's on the enemy missiles when they're flying at you, that will tell you whether or not the missile is still burning. So that means with the PL-5 having a pretty short burn time and the fact that it still has some very good range, more times than not, people aren't going to know your missile's even coming at them. They'll see you and your J-7E, but no missile marker, and then they'll explode. Now, obviously, if they're looking back at you when you fire that missile, they're going to flare it off. Now, that's the other thing with the PL-5s. They're not that flare resistant, at least when comparing it to something like an AIM-9L or an R-24T. But a lot of the time, your opponent won't even know that PL-5B is on the way. And most people aren't going to flare a missile that they don't know is coming. Now, if you want to know more about missiles, Seekerhead has a couple videos on both SAR missiles and IR missiles that go much more in-depth than I ever will. I will link those videos in the description if you want to watch those. Now, those are the reasons I think the J-7E is such a fantastic plane. Now, how does the J-7 stack up against something like the F-14, the plane that most people generally think think is the best plane in War Thunder. Now, the J-7E obviously doesn't have any SAR missiles, which some would consider a drawback. Personally, I don't think it's a drawback. I would much rather have 4 really good IR missiles versus 4 really good SAR missiles. I guess the F-14 can carry double the missiles the J-7 can, and of course AIM-7Fs are really good, but that's just comparing the two planes' missiles. What about the fly performance? So as we all know at this point, the F-14 has some pretty nutty fly performance with those wings swept all the way out. So if it's you in a J-7E versus someone in an F-14 who really knows what they're doing, you're probably not going to win that fight. However, in your average ARB match, I would probably prefer to be in the J-7E over the F-14. Why? Because a lot of these F-14 players don't really have that much experience with top tier, or a lot of the time with War Thunder in general. A very large portion of these players probably bought the F-5C, bombed a bunch of bases to power grind their way to their beloved F-14, and then they get to top tier and don't really know what to do exactly. But it's not really like it's going to matter for that much longer with the MiG-29 and F-16 coming, because once those planes are here, there's really not going to be a point in playing much else other than the F-16 and the MiG-29 at top tier. Obviously, I don't know exactly how the matchmaker is going to go once these planes get added, but I imagine if you're playing 11.0, 11.3 planes, you're going to be playing these new 11.7s. But I guess we'll see when it happens. Alright, that's really all I got to say about the J-7E today. I've been saying I was going to make another J-7E video for a while now, and I decided it's probably about time since the F-16 and MiG-29 are going to be in game very soon. Alright, what do you guys think about the J-7E and how it's going to pan out with the MiG-29 and F-16 being added? Let me know. Alright, that's it from me today. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.